Wonderful. Okay, folks, we are going to get started. And for those of you who are joining us just now, my name is David Sussman. I run a touring company here called David Sussman Israel Tours, or DSI Tours, bringing families from around the world, generation trips, bar bat mitzvah trips, synagogues here to Israel. And as you all know, the entire world is suffering from the pandemic, the corona disease, COVID-19, which has completely destroyed tourism around the world, but definitely here in Israel, as non-citizens aren't even allowed to fly into Israel right now. And they haven't been able to fly into Israel for almost 5 months now. And we're hoping the skies are going to open up. They're discussing opening up the skies here as immediate testing that they can do in the airport. They are considering August 16th. So if you are planning on coming here in December, it does look good that you'll be able to make your trip here in Israel in this coming December. The tour today is sponsored by the Haleva family of Seattle, Washington, by Laura, who was supposed to be on a DSI tour 2 years ago. Everything was set in place, and unfortunately, her father, Marvin, was diagnosed with lung cancer, and she made the decision a week before her trip that she wanted to spend, her and her family, or immediate her kids, with her father for as much time as possible, and did not want to lose out on 10 days. So this tour really is in memory of Marvin Negrin, of blessed memory. May his neshama, his soul, only receive an aliyah, a rising in Shemaim, in the heavens above, for enabling so many of you around the world to join us today as we ride through on an ATV through the biblical landscape of Gush Etzion. And primarily what I want to do today is to ride along a path known as the path of the Patriarchs, or Derech Avot in Hebrew. Derech Avot, the path of the Patriarchs, runs along a ridge line here in the Judean Mountains that begins at the foothills just a little north and slightly east of Beersheba, another biblical city. It's really the city that Abraham spent most of his time here in the land of Israel. And he would travel from Beersheba to Hebron, where he buried his incredible wife Sarah, where he himself would be buried, and where the rest of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, with the exception of Rachel, are buried as well. Now that path continues north. It goes, again, from Beersheba to Hebron, where the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs are, all the way to Jerusalem and through Gush Etzion, where we are right now. It runs along the highest ridge of the Judean Mountains. These are the mountains that you're going to be able to see throughout this tour. And it was built specifically here on this ridge in order to reduce the amount of ascents and descents and ascents, because obviously that's going to tire the pilgrims who are journeying to the holy city of Jerusalem, and in particular, during the days that the temple stood, there are 3 major Jewish holidays. We call them the Shalosh Raglim, right? The 3 major holidays are Pesach, Passover, Shavuot, or known in the Gregorian word as Pentecost, and Sukkot. And on these 3 holidays, it's commanded that we can, if we are with the ability to, that we should ascend to Jerusalem, pay homage to Jerusalem, to our holy city, to offer the korbanot, right, which is loosely translated as sacrifice, but really it comes from the Hebrew word karov, which means to bring one close, right? To bring one close to Hashem, to bring one close to God. And this would have been the path that hundreds of thousands of Jews during that time would have taken on their way to Jerusalem. And we will see ruins, artifacts that date back to this time period, 2,200 years old, maybe even further. We're going to see ruins that date back to the Roman period, mile markers that they built on the same road. We will see communities that are being built here in Gush Etzion that have the same name as the historical communities that stood here during the days of the temple. And I want you to just imagine, if you can, as you look at the panoramic view of Gush Etzion and the Judean Mountains, that every hilltop that you can see would have had a community, a Jewish community living on top of it. And if you take your mountain bike or you go for a hike, or if you have an ATV or some type of four-wheel drive vehicle and you travel and traverse these hills, you'll find the ruins that undoubtedly belong to one of your ancestors, one of your great-great-great-grandparents, however many greats ago. So let's just get started to understand the region that we're in right now and to get a comprehensive idea of the land of Israel. You can break up the land of Israel into 8 segments, to 8 regions, if you will. You have the coastal plains, which on a clear day, from the point that we're at right now, you can see the Mediterranean Sea. And today, the big city of Israel, the financial capital of Israel, the commerce of Israel, which is Tel Aviv. You can see the skyscrapers of Tel Aviv from this location. And those are the coastal plains, right? From Gaza, from Ashkelon, Ashdod, Tel Aviv, Herzliya, Caesarea, Haifa. This is all known as the coastal plain. From the coastal plain, you start to move up into an area known in Hebrew as the Shvela, or the foothills. The foothills to what? The foothills to the Judean Mountains, and that's where we are right now. So this is Judea and Samaria. Those are the biblical heartland of the Jewish people, our holy cities. We're talking about Hebron, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, which I can see, Bethlehem, and I'm not too sure you'll be able to see in the camera, but Bethlehem is just the community. You can see over there, the large buildings, Bethlehem. Jerusalem, which you can see from up here as well. You won't be able to zoom. You can see Jerusalem from here. You can also see the mountains in the horizon, the Moab Mountains, which is in Jordan today. All right, so you have, again, coastal plains, the foothills, the mountainous region. You have the Galilee in the north, which you could subcategorize as the upper Galilee and the lower Galilee. You have the Golan Heights, the volcanic area that was liberated during the 6-Day War of 1967. You have the Dead Sea and the Jordan Valley, and of course you have the Negev as well. You could even add the Jezreel Valley to that as well, which is the connector of the coastal plain to the Jordan Valley, which is where the Dead Sea is located. And all of these areas are completely different from one another. Folks, Israel is the size of New Jersey. It's half the size of Lake Michigan. All of Israel is half the size of one of the lakes in America. And Gush Etzion is a microcosm of all of that. Every valley here is a little bit different from the one over. You have a valley, a mountain, the next valley, it's going to be different than the previous one. And there's lots of springs here. There's a lot of water here in Gush Etzion, which also enabled a lot of biblical agriculture to take place here. This was one of the major agricultural centers that provided food for Jerusalem because of the springs. And we're going to see some of that biblical agriculture. Of course, it doesn't date back to them, but a lot of the agriculture in this area is still being grown and raised in the same way that it was 3,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. So Gush Etzion, from this viewpoint, and we're in a community known as Neve Daniel. It's one of the 14 communities here in Gush Etzion. And I'm going to stay here, but my cameraman is just going to sort of like do a little bit of a gander over here so you get a good view. I'm blocking myself from the wind. You'll hear it a little bit. I'm just moving over to the next pole. So Gush Etzion has 14 communities here. And you can look out onto the hills that surround this area. And from this vantage point, we're about 3,000 feet high. We're 1,000 meters high. In fact, this overlook is called Mitzpor Ha'elef, the 1,000-meter overlook. And from here, as I mentioned before, you can see Jordan, you can see the Moab Mountains, the Moabites, another biblical nation, another biblical people. You can see Herodian from here, which was a huge palace built by King Herod, in which he spent most of his time at. That he governed Jerusalem from this really an artificial mountain, because he built his palace inside of this mountain. You can see all the way to the Mediterranean. You can see the city of Beitar, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So it's going to get windy, and I apologize for the wind. There's nothing that we can really do about it, but we're going to jump into our ATVs, and we are going to head to our first stop. And our first stop is going to be a very, very important stop that we're going to talk about what happened here when the Romans arrived to the land of Israel. So before we go, I'll just mention also, again, we mentioned Derech Avot, the path of the patriarchs being built here because it's on this high ridge line that limited the amount of descents and ascents, right? In order to make it easier for the pilgrims to traverse the land of Israel. It's also the continental divide, right? This is the watershed line. All the rain that falls here to the west will flow to the Mediterranean, and everything that flows to the east will eventually go to the Dead Sea. And that's one of the reasons why they also built the path here, to limit the amount of erosion, right? Amount of erosion. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to head to our ATVs, and you can see we are going to catch a beautiful sunset over the course of the next 45 minutes here in beautiful, beautiful Gush Etzion. And, you know, I'm just looking over here to my right, and we're going to jump over there real quick because I just got to share this. We have some trees here. It's called a bustan. We have some trees that are growing here, and these are some of the special species of trees that grow here in Eretz Israel. The Tanakh, the Bible, the Jewish Bible speaks of 7 species. What are those 7 species? You have 5 fruit trees, and you have 2 grains. Those fruit trees, as you just saw, is the fig tree over here. You have the pomegranate tree. You have the olive tree, and you also have the date tree, and you have grapes. We're going to see all 7 species with the exception of the date trees, which grow more in the desert, in the Midbar. You'll see lots of date groves when you travel to the Dead Sea. But I want to just focus a little bit on the olive tree, because there's just an amazing commentary that Rashi, one of the great commentaries of the 12th century, talks about the dove, right? When you talk about the great flood and Noah's ark, the dove returns to Noah with a olive branch. Why an olive branch? What does the olive branch represent? Do you all know? In your heads, don't unmute yourself. What do you think the olive branch represents? In the international community, the olive branch represents peace. But in Judaism, the olive branch does not actually represent peace. It represents freedom. The fig, which we just saw earlier, that represents freedom, because in the prophecy of Amos, it says that in the days of Mashiach, in the days of redemption, when the world shall know tranquility and there'll be no more wars, every man, right, every human will be able to sit underneath the shade of his fig tree, looking out on his vineyard, sipping his delicious wine. Aren't we waiting for that day? So the fig really represents peace in Judaism. What does the olive branch represent? Represents freedom. And Rashi tells us, nothing is coincidental in the Tanakh, in the Bible. The olive is the only fruit of all the 5 species of fruit trees that you can't pick off the tree, throw it in your mouth, and eat it. Pomegranate, no problem. When it's ripe, you eat it, right? Figs, ripe, you eat it. Dates, pick off the tree, eat it, yum, delicious. The olive, no, you got to put it in brine, a little bit of a process before you can eat it, right? You eat it right now, it's going to be extremely bitter. So what was the deeper message? Rashi tells us, what was the deeper message in the olive branch? The dove was telling Noah that I would rather eat this bitter fruit from the hands of God rather than eat your 3 divine meals, right? Noah fed the animals 3 meals a day, 3 square meals, 3 nice, delicious meals every day. And Rashi goes on, I'd rather eat this bitter fruit by the hands of God than to eat 3 delicious meals by you, but to be trapped in your golden cage. You look out into society, especially with COVID-19, Corona, financial collapse in 2008, the dot-com bubble bursting, and all of a sudden people in their big houses and their mortgage payments and the car payments and the stress that people go through in order to keep up with the Joneses and keep on having all of these delicious, amazing meals and to go out on vacations. But really, they're trapped in a golden cage. But when we rely on Hashem, when we rely on gold alone, even if it's a bitter fruit, that is real freedom that we have right there. It's a good lesson that we should all think about, to live fiscally responsible so that we don't find ourselves trapped in our golden cage. It could be our home. It could be, the 3 car payments, whatever it is that we find ourselves in. But just look at those beautiful figs. Those will be ripe come the fall. So we're jumping into our ATVs over here, and we're going to head out right now to the path of the patriarchs. And this is amazing. This is truly awesome. The first stop we're going to go is the pillar, Rome pillar, near Beitar. So just starting up our engines here. Might be a little bit loud. Safety first, gotta make sure we got our seatbelts on. Okay, and here we go. This is awesome. I'm just looking out here to my left, and I can see the community of Efrat. And that is my town, my city that I live in. And I live in one of the neighborhoods there. Each neighborhood's built on a different hilltop. So each neighborhood really has its own atmosphere, its own culture, its own vibes. And we live in the neighborhood of Dagan, which is wheat. We have the neighborhood of Zait, olives, the neighborhood Tamar, date. These are the species, right? The great species that grow here in Eretz Yisrael. And we are now driving through the community of Neve Daniel. And you can see these just incredibly wonderful, amazing, beautiful Jewish people, teenagers here chatting it up, keeping social distance. I just saw over there, quite incredible. But look at these beautiful homes too. Catch a view on this side. Look at these beautiful homes here in Neve Daniel. Just a real wonderful quality of life that people have here in Gush Etzion. Gorgeous homes here, really living that Jewish dream. Gush Etzion does have a large Anglo community. All the communities of Gush Etzion has a large Anglo presence. And it's just so special to see the life here. I'll slow down here. You can see these young kids getting ready to cross, right? You can see the public transportation, the bus bringing people home from work in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And this is the suburbs. We live in the suburbs over here. I hope you all hear me clearly and that you're enjoying this information. I will be sending out an email to everyone tomorrow with a recording of this tour. So if you want to review it, you can. But also, yeah, assuming everything works right, it does look like it is recording. We will send that out to you. And if you have any questions, jot them down on a piece of paper or in your notes on your iPhone or on your computer and respond to my email. Let me know what your questions are and I will tend to those questions and answer them. Look at the beautiful Israeli flag here. The entrance of Neve Daniel. Again, one of the 14 communities here in Gush Etzion. Each community has its own small grocery store. Many of them have their own pharmacy. the largest one, which is a Efrat, where I live, we have, you know, a small hospital, I guess you call it an infirmary. My son, Benjamin, was named after his great-grandfather, my wife's grandfather, who was the head of the military wing of the Bielski partisans during World War II, during the Holocaust. He saved thousands of lives. And he is pictured in Yad Vashem. So Benjamin took a fall and busted his head open. We took him to the infirmary here in Efrat, and they stitched him up. He didn't have to go to the hospital, the big hospitals. We have 3 of them in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem. But we also have a center of town. It's called Tzomet Gush. The Gush Etzion Junction, we have a large supermarket there. In fact, we have 2, small mall. And really, you know, if you work from home, you work here in the Gush, you do not need to go to the big city for anything. We just turned onto a dirt road. And this dirt road is the path of the patriarchs. This is the path of the patriarchs. And looking at the road, I'll point some out a little bit later. I can actually see cobblestones here from when this was first paved nearly 1,800 years ago by the Romans. All right, the Romans controlled the land of Israel for almost 300 years. All of my tours here in Gush Etzion, I use Gush Etzion ATVs. It's a wonderful company. And anybody listening here in Israel, you can contact them yourself, book a tour with them. They are operational for local tours. And, you know, it's funny. There are a lot of Israelis who are touring Israel now because there's no tourists here. Not only are the places, practically empty, but the prices are really reduced as well. So any Israelis, take the opportunity. Gush Etzion ATV, Asaf, the owner, is a wonderful man, and he'll take on the ATVs. But when I come here with big groups, you know, we'll rent 20 of these, just barreling down the dirt road and enjoying this beautiful tour. Can I get a thumbs up if I'm frozen? We see we have a test phone here. It looks like I'm frozen. Get a thumbs up. Can you guys see me? Are we good? Yeah, we got thumbs up. Wonderful. So it's just the phone that we have here. Check it out, folks. Check this out, huh? You know, there's one thing about learning history in a movie and reading a book. Be able to bring your family here and your children here and to put your hands on history. What I'm standing next to right now and touching is nearly an 1,800-year-old pillar that the Romans placed right here. And why? Well, this is a mile marker, okay? Just like you have on the highways in America, I'm from Boston, I-95, any highway, you'll see the mile markers there. So if you break down, you can win. Where can I go? Not too sure, huh? Hold on. Yeah, there's a lot of. I'm gonna duck down like this, and there we go. I think that's gonna be a little bit better. And you got those mile markers. So if you break down, you can call up, and somebody can come and help you out. And you can do it from the top right there. You can adjust it. And so this is a mile marker that the Romans had used. Now, the Romans did not reinvent the wheel here in Judea, right, in the land of Israel. They took existing roads and perfected them. They made them better. They widened them, and they put cobblestones down on the ground and paved it so that they could move their massive armies through the land of Judea, and that they could also trade, bring the goods from the north to the south and from the various areas. So they had these mile markers to let you know, and this is mile marker number 12, which means going north in this direction, we are 12 Roman miles away from Jerusalem, from Jerusalem. A little bit later in the tour, I'm going to show you pillar number, this is 11, I'm so sorry, this pillar number, I'm going to show you pillar number 12. 13 was discovered, and just a year and a half ago, in a community here in Gush Etzion known as Kfar Etzion, they just found a year and a half ago mile marker number 14. Now, this mile marker did not say 12 miles to Jerusalem. Rather, it said, or 11 miles, 11 miles to Jerusalem. Rather, it said 11 miles to Capitolina. Capitolina was the Roman name for Jerusalem. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a history here. The temple in Jerusalem, which we just commemorated its destruction, the second and the first, which happened on the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, right? Tisha B'Av. We fast on that day. Many tragedies befell the Jewish people on that day. It's a very auspicious time. The temple was destroyed, but many of us weren't sent into exile until Hadrian. There was another rebellion, the Bar Kokhba revolt. And after the Bar Kokhba revolt in the year 132 to 135 CE, a Roman emperor by the name of Hadrian comes in here and he destroys the land of Israel and takes a concentrated focus on Jerusalem, and he destroys every single building in Jerusalem, and he builds a Roman pagan city with a temple to the deity Venus, their chief, pagan god for Jerusalem, and he takes away the name Jerusalem, and for the first time in, I don't know how long, 1400 years, Jerusalem is not called Jerusalem, it's not called Jerusalem, but rather Elio Capitolina. But he doesn't stop there. I want to take you down, and I need somebody to give me some thumbs up a little bit later. If the wind is too much, I will try and relocate myself while my cameraman, Phil, will give you the beautiful views of this region. So follow me down this path right here, and we are going to see some beautiful, beautiful landscape here of Gush Etzion, the biblical landscape of Gush Etzion, the land of our forefathers, not the land just of our forefathers, our land, the land of the Jewish people. The Jews around the world need to know that there's a land. There's a place that we come from, right? There's a place that we come from. I'm going to look a little funny like this. I'm going to try and block the wind if I can. Can I get a thumbs up? Can you guys hear me clearly? Or is the wind too much? Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up. Awesome. So I'll just stand on my little pedestal over here. And behind me, you can see the beautiful mountains of Gush Etzion that descend to the foothills, the Shvela, the other region, which these are limestone mountains. Those are chalk mountains over there, and the foothills, all the way to the coastal plain. And on a clear day or in the middle of the day before the winds come up, you can see the skyline of Tel Aviv, and you can see the Mediterranean Sea from here. But what I want you to focus on, and Phil, just swing around this way. What I want you to focus on is if you can see, and unfortunately it's very hazy, but there is a community behind me, a large Jewish community, maybe about 18,000 people who live there. It's not really part of Gush Etzion, it's its own municipality, and it's known as Beitar, or Beitar Elite. And Beitar is named after the second temple, very important city, known as Beitar. Okay, Beitar was the last stronghold of the Bar Kokhba revolt. And it is written in our scriptures, in our sources, in our ancient texts, that there was so much blood spilled in Beitar, that there was blood that flowed through the valleys here all the way to the Mediterranean Sea, all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. But what I really want to focus on also is just below Beitar, you have an Arab city known as Batir, an Arab city known as Batir. And you can see that this is really temple time, second temple period, Beitar. They never changed the name. Beitar remained Beitar, and the Arabs today who live there call it Batir. And we rebuilt our community just adjacent to our ancient community, and we once again called it Beitar. So incredible to see ruins of our ancient homes, and you see the new homes built right above it. But it doesn't end there. Hadrian, this Machshamo, his name should be erased from history, this terrible human being, who killed hundreds of thousands of Jews. Their blood was flowing all the way to the Mediterranean. He renames the land of Israel, not just Jerusalem, which he called Elo Capitalina. He renames the land of Israel. And what does he call the land of Israel? Anybody want to guess? Don't unmute yourself. Anybody want to guess? Think about it in your head. What does he rename Israel? He calls it Palestine or Palestinia, right? Palestinia. He calls it Palestine. Why Palestine? Where did this name come from? Well, it was the Latin version of the ancient biblical people who arrived here in the land of Israel right around the same time that the Jews did, from the Greek islands, most likely, known as the Philistines, or in Hebrew, the Plishtim. David and Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine. The Philistines killed our first king, Shaul, King Saul, Shaul Amalek, the first king of Israel. They slaughtered him. They dismembered his body and threw him and his sons, their decapitated bodies, and they strung them up on the walls of Beit Shean. But the Philistines hadn't existed in 600 years because they were basically wiped out by the Babylonians at the same time that the Babylonians threw us into exile. But he wanted to throw salt on the wound. Not only am I going to rename your land Israel, which has been known around the world for 1,400 years as Israel, the home of Bnei Yisrael, our forefather Yaakov, who was also called Israel. And he named it Palestine. And so why does Palestine still exist as a name today? Why do people think of this land as Palestine? And this is going to shock you. And remember this and write this down and put this in your back pocket. This is so important for you all to realize, is that Palestine, the land of Israel, has never been independent since the destruction of the Second Temple until 1948. It was always controlled by foreign empires, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Arabs, right? The Arabs were ruling from like Cairo and Damascus and Mecca and Istanbul. The Crusaders back again to Rome, even the English Empire, right? England ruled here for a number of years. The Turks, the Turkish Empire in Istanbul ruled here for almost 400 years. And they said to themselves, do we go back to its original, its authentic name? Do we call it Israel? Or do we keep the name Palestine? Well, they said to themselves, there's nobody from Palestine. There's no, ancient Palestinian. So we will keep that name and there'll be nobody to rebel. So the name Palestine remained for 1,800 years until we were able to throw off the yoke of foreign oppression and liberate our land and ourselves through it. And once again, gave it its name back, Israel. The land of Israel. And just for a moment now, look out onto the beautiful hills of the land of Israel, of Gush Etzion. A gorgeous little sunset that we have over here. Beitar, Batir. So much to learn in just a short period of time, and really a relatively short distance that we're going to travel. We're only ATVing maybe a few miles here in Gush Etzion, and within these few miles, we're going to touch upon so much history, so much stories that we can gain inspiration from, and to gain a better understanding of who we are, right? We must remember our past. We got to remember where we are from in order to remember or to know and to set a course for a bigger, brighter, and better future. Hold on, just, yep, awesome. Just want to make sure the other guys, that little crew here, that they know where we're stopping. We're stopping. The next stop is going to be so special, because I am going to take you to an ancient, to an ancient mikvah. There's another guy heading out on his ATV with his son. Oh, look at that, get that right there. This is just a father with his son, take it outside, with his son ATVing, enjoying the sunsets, connecting the next generation to our previous generations. Very, very important. My friends, I'm here in Israel for nearly 20 years. I came in 2001, in August of 2001, August 21st. I'll be celebrating 19 years here in Israel. Baruch Hashem, thank God. But people still look at me and they know without a doubt I'm from America. Look at me, I got my hat on backwards. Sundays, I like to watch American football. I got the swagger of an American. Now, how American am I? First generation. I'm the first generation born in America on my mother's side. My mother's an immigrant to America. My father was first generation. In other words, my grandfather immigrated to America from Russia during the days, you know, after the pogroms when things were bad over there for the Jewish people and the revolution was taking place. He came to America just before World War I in 1910. So how American am I? I'm here one generation. It only takes one generation for many people to even forget where they came from. And am I from Russia? Or am I from Europe, where my mother's from? Right? Sure, our families were in Germany and throughout Europe in the same location, in the same city for over 1,000 years. Many of us were brought there by the Romans as slaves along the Rhine River, building Roman cities, always dreaming of returning to the land of Israel. So really, historically, this is where we came from. And not a lot of people, you know, today, and it's, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's a wonderful thing in America, the melting pot. I'm 1/16 this, I'm 1/16 that, no, you're Jewish, 100% of your family, okay? We do have converts and we have, you know, people who marry into the Jewish nation, but a majority of who we are, we come from this land. We come from the land of Judea, from the land of Israel, from these hills that we're ATVing through right now. Get a little bit of the ATV in front of us. Not through the window though. That's good? Okay. The beautiful topography here. And Laura, I hope you're with me. I can't see on the phone who's with me, who's not. I just want to say hello to your kids and to your family. And I'm so looking forward to meeting you one day here in Israel when you guys finally make that family trip here. And maybe even as a community, everybody from Seattle, it'd be wonderful, wonderful to see you all here in Israel and to be able to take you around. And when that day that I know will come, when that day comes, and I know it's going to come, that it's going to be very special. It's going to be very special. Part of the reason why it's going to be very special is because of what we are doing right now, right? The fact that Laura reached out to me and she said, hey, I know tourism, it's down. I'm sure you're looking for, you know, even a day of work. And not only that, but I also want to engage my kids with Israel. I want to put on this virtual tour for them to join. She was gracious enough for me to open it up to the general public so all of you could join as well. And I want to say, if any of you want to do a tour somewhere else in Israel, Caesarea, Tel Aviv, yeah, I got some thumbs up. My camera guy said I got some thumbs up. Well, you can reach out to me and we'll go to Jerusalem, we'll go to Caesarea, we'll go to Tel Aviv, and we can do a virtual tour like this. Or if you also just want to support, you know, at the end of a lot of tours, people will give tips. I'm going to send out an email if you guys want to do that. We have PayPal, we have all sorts of ways. Just something to think about. This is cool. This is cool right here. This isn't really what I wanted to show you, but it's interesting. Somebody picked some grapes from the vineyards all over here in our beautiful land of Israel. These aren't ripe. They really won't be ripe until Sukkot, until the fall. If I were to eat it, it'd be very bitter right now. They look ripe. They look delicious. I just want to munch on them right now. But they were placed here for a reason, because what we're looking at is an ancient Second Temple period, 2,000-year-old wine press. Okay, we have an excellent winery here in Gush Etzion called the Gush Etzion Winery. We're going to talk a little bit more about the vineyards and wine later, but I just want to point this out, that people would take their grapes, put them here, stomp on them, barefoot, by the way, barefoot, so that some of the, I don't know, the fungus or the enzymes of the feet is good for the beginning of the fermentation process. barefoot. They would stomp on their grapes here, and you can still see the channel. The juice would all flow into this vat. You'd have your grape juice in the beginning of your wine. And why is this located here? Well, anybody who's been to Jerusalem, you know that in the important tourist attractions, right? Sometimes we forget that we're in a holy place because it's a tourist attraction. We are learning and we're connected to our history, but we're also remembering that this is a spiritual place as well. But we are now in a tourist attraction 2,200 years ago that also provided a spiritual purpose that we're going to learn about momentarily. But here, somebody built this. They would take their grapes, they would squeeze them, and they would sell fresh wine, grape juice for people to continue on their journey to the holy city of Jerusalem, to the holy city of Jerusalem. Just look at this ATV here. Look at this guy. I just want to say we're live right now. We are live. We're doing a virtual Zoom tour. And this gentleman over here, Ben Goldstein, we were supposed to meet. And if the Shapiros are out there from Ottawa, Canada, I hope you guys are tuning in, Nikki and Michael. So they've been trying to introduce me to this gentleman here, Ben Goldstein, who I'm a fan of virtually because he comes out here almost every single night at this hour. And you guys can look him up, Ben Goldstein, on Facebook. And he gives some incredible, I almost really want to call them sermons, like just preaching words from the Tanakh. It looks awesome. It looks awesome. But you can see he's armed. He's part of the security apparatus here in Gush Etzion, patrolling the area, making sure that everybody's safe. He visits soldiers. He gives gifts. He's got a nonprofit that he tries to help out anybody in need, but primarily focusing on security. Just an awesome, awesome guy. I'm so thrilled to meet you at this point because we've texted a few times. Somebody gave his number. And Derek Havot, right? On the tablet pictures. Please. But don't plug me. I just want you to plug Gush Etzion. Not for any reason for that, but I do watch. Can you guys hear him? I can sign. Sort of.
Listen, we're going to do a joint video together if that's cool with you.
That's fine with me.
We're going to head out to some amazing areas. We're going to learn a little Torah together. He's going to teach me about history because that's his expertise. He loves and knows, and it sweats out of his pores here. Now, if you want to pay attention to what we're about to do, if you want to join me, you can.
We're not joining you.
No, he's not joining
Another
me.
day.
Another day, we're going to hit it up. I got to get out of here. It's great to meet you.
He's got to do his thing. It's good to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you guys. Bye.
Great, Ben. Really good to meet you. That was so cool. You know, you just got so many incredible local residents here in Gush Etzion that are doing incredible things for Klal Yisrael, for all of Israel. He's got a super ATV. He just spun out, heading out here. Okay, let's refocus. What are we doing here? We just saw a wine press. We know this is sort of like a tourist attraction over here, but it's really a spiritual place. Check this out, my friends, and stand a little bit back so you get like a full view of what's going on here. I'm standing on this wall. This was discovered, you know, a few decades ago. What we are looking at right here is a Second Temple period. This could be about 2,200 years old. This is an ancient mikvah, okay? A ritual bath for not scrubbing yourself clean, but for spiritual purification, right? There are a segment of the Jewish people called Hasidim who go to the mikvah and purify themselves every day, right? Women who keep the family purity laws will go to a mikvah once a month in order to purify themselves as well. Folks like myself, we try to go maybe before Shabbat or definitely before the high holidays. But back in the day, people would go to the mikvah, men at least, women always went to the mikvah, but men for sure were commanded when they went to Jerusalem, when they would go up to the temple to spiritually purify themselves, to reframe, to have that paradigm shift, to say, wait a second, this isn't a normal activity. I'm not visiting a museum. I am going to the temple to connect to God, right? But what's God? God gave a little bit of himself in each and every single one of us. And God's infinite, which means he's got an infinite amount of himself to give to us. And no one piece is the same as the other. Just like God is one, you're one. And it takes one to know one. And the more you know yourself, the more you'll know God. It takes one to know one. He knows you. When you know yourself, you'll know him, right? Takes one to know one. And this was a place that we could say, wait a second, this isn't normal. I'm connecting to that spiritual gift I was given that I need to share with the rest of the world. But this mikvah is no ordinary mikvah. This is a extremely highly detailed mikvah that would have cost major moolah. Some kids here riding their dirt bikes. There's a little bit of noise behind me, riding up and down the hill, having a good time, right? We're in the rural area. I'm sure you guys have people riding dirt bikes where you're from as well. This is an ancient mikvah. Now, what is so detailed about this? So we have a Mishnah, right? We have our oral Torah, and the oral Torah tells us how to build a mikvah. And one of the details of a mikvah is that it needs either one or the other, two openings that you can see behind me, or a wall to divide the entrance, right? Now, why? Well, you'd have people coming down one side, the right-hand side, impure, purifying themselves inside, and then ascending on the other side, purified. And you wouldn't want to come into contact, rub shoulders, something like that, and get some type of spiritual contamination, whatever that's about, right? You wouldn't want to get that. So you'd want it to be separated, the impure and the pure. You wanted that to be separated so that you would remain pure as you approach Jerusalem. So why does this have both? It doesn't need both. Takes time, and this is expensive to build a wall out of the concrete here. Why would you do that if you didn't need to? So this mikvah was heavily used. So this is what the experts believe. In order to ensure that you wouldn't have cross-contamination, they would keep it separated with two openings and with a wall. Again, in our Gemara now, you have the Mishnah, then expound on the Mishnah, you have the Gemara, you put those two together, you have the Talmud. These are our ancient texts that explain biblical law, halakha, right, which a lot of people will translate as law, like I just did, halakha law, but it really comes from the word odlech, which means to go, right? So it's really the way of the Jew, right? Or halakha, it's the way of the Jew. It's the way that we perceive the world. It's the way we look at right from wrong. It gives us a clear choice to make in life. And our halakha, it says in the Gemara, there's a debate between the rabbis. We're always debating one another. And the debate is, does one need to purify himself in a mikvah, in a ritual bath, upon seeing Jerusalem or upon entering Jerusalem? So many pilgrims would have purified themselves probably both times to ensure, or maybe this is proof that it really should be upon seeing it, because from there, Mitzvah Elef, where we started out the tour, you could see Jerusalem, you could see Hebron, you could see the surrounding areas. It was hazy, we couldn't see it all. We could see Jordan, we could see Tel Aviv, really high. We see all the mountains over here, and from here you could see Jerusalem for the very first time. You could see Jerusalem, which means you have to purify yourself. So everybody, and you're talking tens of thousands of people heading towards Jerusalem, would come here, and this was the mikvah. Walk down impure, enter. I'm not going to take you in there because I'm afraid that the internet will get disconnected, but you go in there, purify yourself, and come up on the other side. Folks, I am standing on our history. I'm touching the stone, the stairs, the steps that without a doubt my great-grandfather used to purify himself. And in the winter, when this fills up, there are people who come here and they will still use this as a mikvah because it would still be a kosher mikvah. It's not plastered anymore after a month, really. You know, it's either dirty and you can't use it, or the water's gone because it seeps into the stone. But this is a mikvah. You know, this is a concrete link. That's what I like to do on my tour, concrete link to who we are today, who we were yesterday. 2,000 years ago, we're still the same people, the same language, the same God, the same, dietary laws, the same holidays, the same everything. This is how we have survived for 2,000 years. We've never forgot our land. We never forgot who we are. We really should be the hero story of the entire world. Every minority, every oppressed people should look to the Jewish people as inspiration and say to themselves that if we never give up, and we never don't forget who we are. Eventually, good will triumph evil. Truth will always overcome. And it might take 2,000 years like it did with the Jewish people. But look at the Jewish people. They never gave up. They never forgot who they were. They never forgot their traditions. They remembered their ancestors. They honored their grandparents and their parents. And look at them. They're back in their homeland today. This is the hero story. We threw off the yoke of foreign oppression, right? The invaders, and we entered into the land of Israel. Then, yeah, the next stop, here we are already. Right there. Okay, fine. So hold on 1 second. This is what I'm going to do. Come on over here, Phil. I want to show you guys something. And now, tell me if you're comfortable with this. Maybe come across this way. Oh, yeah, we're at the hour. So we're almost done, folks. If you could bear with me, maybe we'll go a little bit over time if you don't mind. Come around this way. Phil, come this way. This will be easy. I just want to show you something. Now that the sun's setting, it's a little bit easier. You can see the contours of the land. But look out onto the hill. Let me see what you see over there. You guys can see, oh, guys, I'm looking at what you're seeing right now. I'm holding the camera. Is that not stunning? That sunset and those colors? I wish Zoom allowed me to zoom in, but can you guys see the trees that are growing on that hill on the other side? Nod your head up and down, Ruth, because I got you. You're like one of the only people I can see. You can see all those trees over there. Cool. That is agriculture that is being grown in the same way that it was grown in the biblical period. And what do I mean by that? There are a lot of springs here in Gush Etzion, and there's a lot of water in these mountains. And so they take the springs and they build these aqueducts in order to irrigate the land. But the steepness, the gradient of the slope here is so great that all the soil would wash away, right? The erosion. If you guys look into the book of Joshua, Yeshua, the conquest of the land of Canaan, there was a scene in Shiloh, one of the biblical cities, important city, the Mishkan, which would eventually become the temple. They would don't go too far. Don't go down there because it's private property. Not that I think they would mind, but we gotta respect. And oops, it's getting windy right here. And so where was I talking about? I really want them to see that view, so I'll go a little bit ahead of you. Hold on, folks. Bear with us. We want to make this as perfect as possible for you. So there was a scene in the Bible, right? They went to Joshua and Shiloh, and they said, "Hey, you brought us out here to the land of Canaan, but the Canaanites are in the valleys and the fertile ground, and the Philistines who arrived from like the Greek islands or from wherever, they're on the coastal plains, and we're stuck up here on the hilltops. And what are we to do? How are we to survive up here?" And he says, "What are you talking about? Use your Yiddish Kopf. Use that mind that God has blessed you with, and be innovative." Right? Be innovative. The Jewish people have been innovative for the last 1,500 years, 3,500 years. Be innovative. Dig cisterns, collect water, plant fruit trees, and build terraces. And so those terraces trap the soil. We irrigate using the springs, and you have the beautiful agriculture here in the biblical landscape of Gush Etzion. This is so cool for me to see and to witness every day of my life living out here. And it's an honor to be able to bring people here to see it themselves on one of their days of their 2-week journey here in Israel. And it's a blessing for me. And again, thank you, Laura Haleva, and for making this opportunity and enabling me to show it to you here virtually on this live virtual Zoom tour of the biblical landscape of Gush Etzion. So I'm going to climb up the rocks here, the limestone rocks, head back to our ATV. And I have really 1 or 2 more stops. We'll see how it goes. If anybody needs to bail out, like I said it was going to be an hour. If you need to bail out, that's okay. I totally understand. I'm hoping that if everything's working properly and it's being recorded, I'm going to send a recording to everybody who joined the tour and everybody who contacts me who wants to join the tour. To see this tour, I'll send them the video with pleasure. Because this is our heritage, this is our land, this is important. Danielle, just keep an eye. I may stop before the vineyards on the way back to Deer Park, okay? Very briefly. Okay. Seatbelt. Thank you, Phil. Always reminding me, keeping me safe. Towards Deer Park, yeah. But I'm gonna make a couple stops, so just watch me in the rearview mirror. Are you guys enjoying? Are you guys having a good time? Let me see some thumbs up. Phil, let me know. Yeah? Great. Such a pleasure to be able to do something that I love that has been somewhat taken away from me. I do try and provide great content. I do try and provide great content on a daily basis on my Facebook page. Please look me up, David Sussman Israel Tours. There's David Sussman is my private page. And you can follow that. I don't have any more room for friends. They tap you out at 5,000. But go ahead, like and follow my fan page, my business page, David Sussman Israel Tours. I got great videos. You can scroll down. I also have a Patreon site. I had a television show called Lands of the Bible. And we have 52 professionally shot videos of all around Israel, and you guys can subscribe to that. I'll add that to one of the emails. Just taking this. Look, there's another mile marker, my friends. Mile marker number 12. Before it was 11. We're traveling south, right? We're going south from. Thank you, Nachmani, Heidi. Everybody's texting. Okay, this is another mile marker from mile marker 12. We're traveling south right now. We're traveling south. And we are going to continue on the path of the Patriarchs. So awesome. You know, it's like the wind has died down and it's so, so beautiful. I am going to go ahead and make another quick stop right here. And there's gonna be one more after this. Is that okay? Do it fast. Okay, I'm gonna do it fast. All right? I'm doing it fast. I'm doing it fast. I'm just stopping here very, very quickly. On the other side of that hill over there, you have an Arab community known as Khirbat Zechariah, the ruins of Zechariah. Zechariah is a name. Many of us know Zechariah, one of the prophets in the Tanakh. But Zechariah is also a place. This was a place called Beit Zechariah, the house of Zechariah. And there was a famous battle that's spoken about in the book of Maccabees, right? It's not in the Tanakh, it's not in the Bible, it's in the Christian Bible. And it talks about the story of Hanukkah. And there was a famous battle with Yehuda HaMaccabee and his brother Elazar. And they're in Jerusalem, and they know the Greek army's coming here, 100,000 soldiers, and 20,000 of them on horseback, and they have 32 war elephants with them. War elephants. These were like the tanks. These were the Merkava 4 in America, the Abrams, right? Massive war machines, right? The elephants coming, 32 of them coming in here. Elazar, Yehuda, Maccabee hear that. They get onto the horses. They charge. They come out here. They bring it, right? We always hear people saying that. They bring it. Here, look at the ATVs passing by us. This is Gush Etzion ATVs, right? We got some local tourists who are coming by. We'll just watch them because it's going to make a lot of noise. Bringing out their families, opportunity. There's no tourists. Prices are discount if you're in Israel. Gush Etzion ATV. Asaf is the owner. I can't speak more positive about him. There's not enough words to describe how awesome this guy is. Anyways, take the opportunity. So all the 100,000 soldiers, 20,000 on horseback, 32 war elephants, and you know, Yehuda Maccabee, Elazar, some of their men, they come out here, they bring it, right? They bring the war to them. They don't wait for the war to come to Jerusalem. They bring it to them, and they see this just huge battalion. And Elazar's with his sword, and he's slashing people left and right. And I think in the movie Braveheart, I know Mel Gibson's not like the biggest friend of the Jews, but you know, Braveheart, he's fighting, he's going through, and he sees this elephant with a man in golden armor. He realizes it's got to be one of the generals. And he goes right to it, and he kills the elephant by sticking his sword in the underbelly of this elephant where the armor wasn't located, and it falls and crushes the general who was on top of it, and he finishes the job. And it was a major victory in the story of Hanukkah. But the house of Zechariah, Beit Zechariah, the town was destroyed. The Arabs who lived there still call it Herbat Zechariah. They still call it the ruins of Zechariah. They didn't rename it. Beitar, Batir. So many of the communities throughout the land of Israel, whether they're inhabited by Arabs or other people, just non-Jews who came here in various times in different empires of foreign oppression against the Jewish people, there was always Jews who lived there, retain those biblical names. It's just awesome to be able to see it, to touch it, to know the story of Hanukkah, to be able to come here, to see the places where the battles took place. I mean, look, we've been on this tour for about an hour. We have touched, on all of Israel, because you can see so much of it. We touched upon biblical agriculture, Second Temple period, the destruction of Jerusalem, the renaming of Eretz Israel to the name Palestine, why it's still referred to as Palestine by so many people, because the land was never independent, always ruled by foreign oppressors. And we talked about the story of Hanukkah. I think that's pretty good. I think that's pretty awesome to be able to do that. Now imagine what we could do on a 10 or 12-day tour. You know, it's very important. It's very hard today. You know, back in the day, Jews were treated as second-class citizens wherever we lived. We were forced into ghettos. We were really forced to rely and lean upon one another. And that's, we still have a remnant of that. You know, you're in an airport or you're at a restaurant or in a foreign city, a tourist destination. You're in Paris and you meet another family and they end up being Jewish and you're like, oh, you guys are Jews, we're Jewish too. And it's a happy moment. You know, we relied on one another for so long, but today everybody moves apart and we live in communities where maybe there's another Jewish family on our street. We don't live near the synagogue. It's not centrally located anymore. And we need to fight in order to retain our Jewish identity, in order to keep our kids and our grandkids, right? I could see a lot of grandparents that have joined us today, in order to help them retain their Jewish identity. And one of the ways we could do that is that trip of a lifetime, coming here to Israel, making that investment. It is worth the money, because the impact of a trip to Israel will be felt in your family for generations. Your children, your grandchildren will remember that trip. They're going to want to have a Jewish home, a Jewish household, and they are going to want to bring their kids to Israel as well. We owe it to our ancestors, we owe it to ourselves, but really we owe it to our children as well. We're going to stop here for our last stop, okay? We're going to stop here for our last stop. And what we are stopping here is to look again. First, let's do a pano. Come over here, Phil. So you're gonna come on up here and just look at this beautiful valley. Here, let me see the camera real quick. Look at this beautiful valley we have here. These are all vineyards owned by the Gush Etzion winery. The vineyards here in the biblical landscape of Gush Etzion. You can see the lights in the distance there. That is Beitar that we talked about so many times. And I'm going to bring you in close. Here, Phil, take this back. Thank you. I'm going to bring you into the vineyard here. And this is important. We're looking at these beautiful, delicious grapes. Again, these will be ripe, come Sukkot, come the fall, but just look how robust. When the 12 spies came, one of the things that they brought back was this huge, what do you call this? Remember? Cluster of grapes, a huge cluster of grapes over here. Some of them already, falling off of the, maybe they picked them here and just keep the good ones. Anyhow, when those modern Zionists, when those people wanted to return to our biblical homeland and to develop Gush Etzion, they wanted to plant vineyards here because in the Tanakh, it speaks about the incredible wine that was produced here in Eretz Yisrael. In fact, some of the best wine in the world at that time. We exported our wine to the world. People were like, we want the wine from the Jews. Why would they want the wine from the Jews? Well, we did it best. Think about it. I know what you're thinking. You're like, come on, please. Manischewitz, right? How do we go from like the best wine to Manischewitz? You got to be at least 70 years old to enjoy Manischewitz. Bless my mom's, soul, 81 years old. I think she's tuning in here as well. I visit her. She lives in Fort Myers Beach. She's in Florida. And immediately when I come, she's like, hey, David, let's have a l'chaim. She takes out the Manischewitz. I'm like, okay, I'll do it for you, Mom, right? How'd that all happen? Day 8 at the bris, put a little wine in the mouth of the child. Pesach, 4 cups of wine. Havdalah, kos wine. Shabbat, a glass of wine. Holidays, wine. We drink wine as Jews. We had some of the best wines. When the modern Zionists want to settle the biblical land here and return to our ancient homes, they want to plant the vineyards. The experts said the wine will not grow here. They said it must grow here. It grew here. It says in our scriptures that when we return, it'll grow again. They planted it. Some of the best wine is produced in this region because even though the soil's not great at the surface level, the roots have to dig down deep into the limestone, bringing up all those nutrients from the rock, giving it a hearty, robust, beautiful flavor. Some of the best wines, and they're kosher today, come from Israel. And there was a winery called Flam. I'm going to make this short. I want to share some other things. Another tour, hit me up. We'll go through the whole story. Flam Winery won a reward in France for their Chardonnay. And at the reward, it was like blind taste and all that. They won. And they said, it's amazing what you've been able to do with our grapes in your land. And he says, you got it wrong. These grapes originated in Israel, and it was the Romans who took it from the land of Israel and brought these strains of grapes to Europe. And he said, the proof is, if you take the word Chardonnay, which most people think is named after Chardonnay, France. Chardonnay is France, named after the grape Chardonnay. You get 2 Hebrew words, Char, which means gateway, Chardonnay, 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 the gateway to heaven, the gateway to God, the gateway to spirituality. We do not drink to forget. We do not drink to just party and get inebriated. When we have a l'chaim and we have something to eat with it as well, we do it in order to bring down some of the barriers that we have in order to override some of our analytical thinking so that we can ascend to a higher spiritual place. And on Shabbat, historically it was the man who worked in the fields and the mother would be at home raising the children, taking care of the home. And the father would come into the house, always, 6 days in the field, checking his pockets and, looking over his shoulder, people trying to rip him off. And once he's supposed to reach his spiritual place and be with his family, how? Kos yain, a glass of wine, kiddush. Take it down a notch and remember what's important in life. Connect with your surroundings. Connect with that part of Hashem that exists inside of you. Connect with your family. It's really about family. It's about exploring yourself, digging down deep, sharing with your family, and then being a light upon the nations. That is what we are supposed to do. Enjoy the rest of this ATV ride back to our home base at Gush Etzion ATV, Gush ATV, who have given us their ATVs here. And we are going to enjoy this ride. I'm going to have my cameraman, Phil, who's done an excellent job, to put the camera outside the vehicle. We'll follow the ATV in front of us. until we get back. I do want to say once again, it's been such a pleasure to be able to do this. Thank you again to Laura. This has been in memory and for the rising, the aliyah, the neshama, the soul of Marvin Negrin, who did a wonderful job in raising Laura, who in return is passing on that incredible job to her children, generation to generation, door to door. If anybody wants to contact me, you all subscribe to my mailing list. I'm going to send you out an email with a video of this. Ask me your questions, book me for a virtual tour for your own family, for your own community. We can keep it private. We can open it up to the public like we did this time. It's up to you. Like me on Facebook, David Sussman Israel Tours. Visit my Patreon site. I'll send it to you in an email as well. We have 52 half-hour episodes all over Israel, another 49 5-minute clips. I am producing a lot of content that's on Facebook every week. If you want to tip me for the tour, you don't have to, obviously. That was sponsored by Laura, but feel free to. I'll send you my PayPal account. It's paypal.me/Antelope Runner. It's a long story. I don't know how to switch it, but it's Antelope Runner. That's what it is. My cameraman's looking at me and saying, I know what that is. That is a shout out to my favorite band, Fish. You got to run like an antelope out of control. Anyhow, it is paypal.me/Antelope Runner. That's my PayPal account. David Sussman Israel Tours on Facebook. It's been such a pleasure. I would love your feedback. I really would. Please, you know, I haven't been able to watch your faces. Phil's been doing a great job holding the camera. I've been in front of it. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you didn't like. I am okay with constructive criticism. I really am. And it's been great. God bless everyone, all of you who joined, to your families, to your roots. I know I have a lot of fans who are here who are not Jewish, because the show I had was aired on Daystar Christian Network. God bless all of you too. Thank you for being a friend to Israel. Thank you for supporting Israel. Thank you for supporting the Jewish people. And I'll just say, get out of the vehicle and say one last little sayonara to y'all. And let you know from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Thank you, Laura Halevi, Leva. I always say her name wrong. I'm so sorry. See the ATVs here. Gush Etzion ATV. Thank you to Asaf. Thank you to everyone. It's been a pleasure. God bless. You all have a wonderful week. Thank you. Thank you.